Joining us now in the studios, it's Brian Flowers. Mr. Flowers is a candidate for Mississippi's 2nd Congressional District. That would be the seat presently held by Benny Thompson going back to 92, 94, something like that.
29 years ago.
Yeah. So anyhow, you, Mr. Flowers, have advanced to a runoff coming up here. We should be clear about this. June the 28th.
That's correct.
Is the runoff. You just completed the primary. The primaries were held here in Mississippi on June the 7th.
It was, and to be honest with you, I was pretty disappointed in the turnout. It just seems like it wasn't very well advertised on when the primary was. There's a lot of people that I've talked to that they didn't even know when it was.
Yeah.
So
I've talked to the same. So just looking here at the latest count, looks like 13,951 voted in the Republican primary in your district. Is that in line with what you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And on the Democrat side, it was 40,000 in the district. Benny Thompson received 96.2% of that vote, 38,000. Wow.
And 35,000 of it came in 5 minutes after the polls closed, which I kind of find funny, too. So
interesting.
I'm just going to throw that out there and leave it alone.
All right, so let's talk about the runoff coming up. You will be facing Mr. Eller, right?
Yes, sir.
Coming up. And let's see, the results were you received 6,000 plus votes, and Ron Eller received 4,500.
Yes,
so you beat him by about 30-40% there, it looks like. So, and then Michael Carson, 29-16, Stanford Johnson, 482. All right, so you got that coming up. First, tell the audience, the voters, how you and Mr. Eller differ in your approach to governing.
It's very simple. In my campaign, anybody asks me a question, just like we talked about on the last time I was on your show. Anybody asks me a question, I will tell them exactly what my plans are, what I want to do with it, and if I don't have a plan, at least I present an idea that I would like to present as an option. Where, Mr. Eller wants to give you long-winded conversations and incorporates history lessons and Bible verses in there, and doesn't give you any facts or any substance to what he wants to do.
Gotcha.
Talks general Republican talking points.
Okay. So what are your 3 top priorities should you be seated in the U.S. House of Representatives?
Top priorities: infrastructure, education, and jobs. And infrastructure includes those Yazoo pumps that have not been put in for decades now.
Right.
We have got to get those put in. We need true infrastructure, such as roads, bridges. One thing I keep bringing up is I want good education for my children. I want good roads and bridges to drive on. I want good railways, good airports so I can travel with my family. I want make sure that we have good paying jobs. Now, if I want that for me, more than likely, a lot of other people want the same thing for their families. Good education, good infrastructure, good ports that we can get our commodities in.
Right.
So it's not just pandering to my constituents or anybody else that are out there telling them what they want to hear.
Gotcha.
It is very personal to me as well as my family.
Okay. Would you have, speaking of infrastructure, would you have supported the bipartisan infrastructure bill? It's called bipartisan because it did receive some Republican votes in both houses. It was $1.2 trillion under President Joe Biden passed last fall. Is that something you would have supported?
Absolutely not. And that bill was full of a bunch of fluff and extras that add to the national debt that the taxpayers are going to have to pay for. And it didn't cover what we need here.
Okay. Gotcha. So what are you hearing from your constituents as their concerns and something and the things they'd like to see government address?
One thing is they are tired of being ignored. Every person I've talked to, they sit there and they have made valid point after point after point, and I have adopted that same point. Is look around. In 30 years that Benny Thompson has been in office, has the district gotten better? worse, or stayed the same? The answer is clear. It's gotten worse. And people have reached out to his office about certain problems, certain things that they'd like to see changed, and they are ignored. So one thing is they want somebody in there that is willing to listen to them and work for them and not themselves.
Yeah.
That is their biggest statement that I keep hearing from everybody.
Why do you think the voters keep sending him back?
You know, I think we touched a little bit about this on the last show that I was on, and a lot of it has to do with intimidation. I mean, it's a D+14 district. Now, this election, I believe that D+14, even though it's D+14, there's a lot of Democratic voters that are going to be coming out of the Republican side and voting to get Benny Thompson out. They're sick of it. They're tired of it. And, you know, it's going to be a big change, I think, this year. Are
you hearing complaints about the cost of living? We've been talking about that a lot on the program. Inflation, of course, through the roof, price of gas, et cetera. Are people complaining about that and looking for some solutions from government?
People are complaining. Every time I go to the pump, I'll hear people talking about the gas prices. Mm-hmm. I'll hear people talking about, in the grocery store, good Lord, it's gone up another 10 cents, regardless of what the item may be. Mm-hmm. People are tired of it. They are on a budget, and this is where the federal government is supposed to be on a budget, and they don't adhere to a budget. They just spend, and now we're in the problem that we're in, and now it's causing the other people in America that are supposed to be or that are on a budget, now they're having to figure out how to adjust their way of living. And it's not just the people that can afford it. You have people that are in poverty, that are on food stamps. Mm-hmm. Those food stamps, you only get X amount of food stamps. As inflation goes up, you're not going to get more food stamps. You're going to be getting the same amount and having to do with less. So now you're being driven further into poverty. You got the people that were in the lower middle class are now moving into poverty, and it just trickles down.
So one of the things we hear a lot about federal spending, of course, is that it keeps going up, as you indicated, but the Congress, for the most part, really only votes on discretionary spending, the mandatory spending, all the programs that are in place by statute. The Congress really doesn't even vote on that, and that consumes 70% of our spending. But these continuing resolutions, the omnibus bills that are appropriated on an annual basis that Congress does vote for, which represents about 30% of our spending, where would you stand on that? Would you be willing to take a stand and say, I'm just not going to vote for this, and yeah, this may result in shutting down the government, but we got to come to grips with our fetish for spending?
We do. And to be fiscally responsible with the taxpayers' money, they are putting their hard-earned money into our hands to run the government the best way that we can. What needs to happen is people need to sit there and put their foot down and say, no more continuing resolutions. We're done. We need to get this government on a balanced budget. Now, if that means cutting back on certain programs so that we can stay within our budget, then fine. This goes back to what I've been saying with the where I work at Grand Gulf. I have to go, if I want more money, I'm the contract manager and the finance coordinator for my department. When I need to get money, I have to go to a committee and say, I want X amount of money. Okay, well, what are you going to give up so you can pay for that money? Because the company's not just going to give me more money. I have to offset it with something else. Yeah. So in Congress, I plan on doing that, providing that way of thinking to the method of trying to balance this budget. If you want a program or you want to put a bill forward, okay, fine. Well, what are you willing to get rid of to pay for this bill that you're wanting to put forward? We can't just keep shelling out money. Yeah. We're borrowing money from other countries to run our own country. And when does it stop? When do we stop being the United States and start being so indebted to other countries that now we're a part of that country?
Gotcha. What do you think about term limits? What do you think is the appropriate term for a member of the House, member of the Senate?
I believe 12 years. That gives a person enough time to get in there, get their feet up underneath themselves, and actually get things accomplished to where if they have a long-term project that they want to work on, to be able to see that through. But that gives 6 years to the House of Representatives if they can last that long as far as being elected. and it gives 2 terms to the Senate.
Got you.
So,
Got you. Well, if that were the case, Representative Thompson would have been gone a long time ago.
he needed to be gone after about the 2nd term he was in there.
Good luck to you, Brian. Appreciate you coming on Middays.
Thanks, sir.
You bet. Brian Flowers, candidate for Mississippi's 2nd Congressional District. Most importantly, folks, June the 28th. Hurry up.
One more thing. I just want to make sure to let everybody know, if anybody wants to come to my website, they can visit me at flowersforcongress.com. Also find me on Facebook at Brian Flowers for Congress. And if they want to donate, there is a donate button on my website, and we could always use any extra help.
We got you.